Hey, look what we have found. A big sound in a small town. Far away from the bright lights. They're making music every night. Discover what is all around. A big sound. A big sound. In a small town. Big sound, small town. A really big sound. Big sound, small town.
You're listening to Big Sound, Small Town with Sandy Carlton.
My name is Emma Buckner. I am both a classical performer and a fiddle player from Shelby, North Carolina, and I'm currently studying music at Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm also a singer and a ukulele player in a local band called the Dancing Fleas.
That's great. Now tell me how this all came about. I mean, okay, you have a background in music. Your dad is somewhat involved.
Yes, I suppose somewhat is one way to say it. I guess if you were going to start with just fiddle playing or violin playing in general, I started playing when I was 3.5, which is it's pretty young, but a lot of people when starting with a specific method called the Suzuki method do start that young. My father is a music director at a local church called Central United Methodist Church, and one Sunday when I was sitting in the pew with my mother and my sister, a violinist came to play for the church, and her name was Jenny Quinn, and I was 3 years old. You never know what a 3-year-old's going to say in church.
Yeah, true.
And after seeing that violinist play, I pointed at her and I turned to my mother and I said, I want to play the violin. And she said, of course, okay, sure, you want to play violin, but you're 3. You wanted to ride dragons yesterday. So,
Yeah.
of course, I
still want to ride dragons.
I still want to do that, Mom. Thanks. But I picked up a violin when I was very young, and I had an incredible instructor. Her name was Morgan Champney. She has taught many a violinist in this town. She left for Oklahoma City a couple years ago, but she will still be one of the most impactful teachers I will have ever had in my life. And she was also an angel on earth, because dealing with a 3.5-year-old right after she came home from school, when you're trying to get her to learn how to play an instrument, was certainly a challenge. And, you know, she always came up with the best games to play and things like that. And she has been one of the most foundational people to help me with my violin experience and my oral learning for that.
Does okay, as you progress through school, did you play at stuff, or did you have recitals? Did you play at different functions?
I did some.
Did you play at your church?
Oh, yes, actually, I did. I can't believe I didn't think to talk about this. I began playing in my church when I was probably, I would say, in the 5th grade. And, you know, I was very young. I'm pretty sure I was not that good at violin at the time. But, of course, my dad worked at the church, and my sister and I were 1 and 2 years old when we joined that church. So, you know, we had grown up with that church being our family. So getting a chance to be a part of that was so huge to me. And, you know, not only was it the first time that I had really been given a piece of music and said, I want you to read this, but it was also the first time that I learned how to improv. I learned how to improv when playing in that church because, you know, I had grown up so young. I had gone to church every Sunday. You know, I had learned all the pieces since I was very little. So when I get up there and he says, I want you to read this piece of music, my first thought is, well, first of all, I don't really know how to read, but also I already know what this sounds like. You know, I sing it every Sunday, so why don't I just do that on the violin? And then it starts to become, well, how can I make this different? You know, how can I hold out certain notes? How can I start to add my own melodies? And then it starts translating into what I do today, which is the huge, you know, the improv stuff that I love so much. It all started there with all those Christian pieces that I've known since I was so young.
All the ones that were the last time anyone wrote any new stuff was like the 1500s.
Yes, and that aided very well. You know, everything I had learned when I was young came back around every year, so I got a chance to try it again and again, and I kept getting better.
Did your dad accompany you at times with this, or would they just throw you out there all by yourself?
Yes, my dad did accompany me. In fact, still now, when I'm home from college, I'll play with them. Central United Methodist Church has a praise band that has been going for quite a while. I actually, you know, I've been playing with Stan Anthony in the Dancing Fleas, but I first knew him through this band. He plays guitar and bass sometimes in the band, but that was a really cool experience for such a young kid to get to play with a real, a real band for the first time.
Right.
And it was the first time I had ever been in a collaborative atmosphere.
Right.
You know, when you start with classical music, you do your recital every year. You know, sometimes you'll have group lessons with other people, but it was really the first time that I got to play not only with other instruments, but also got to collaborate with other people.
Sure. I mean, so much of classical music, at least for a really long time, is individual performance. Mm-hmm. I mean, you go a long way before you actually get to play with people in a collaborative manner.
Absolutely. I think, you know, I started playing in the orchestra in middle school. And, I mean, of course, that was always really fun for me. And my lovely parents, I will always thank them for this. They used to drive me 2 hours every week to Hendersonville, which, you know, an hour up, an hour back on Monday nights so that I could play with the Hendersonville Youth Symphony. And, you know, I was really young. I was in the 7th grade, and it was the best thing to me. It was amazing. And I'm so grateful that I got to do that just because I went to an academic school, you know. Right. So the music program was not very big, so I was not really getting stimulated there. Yeah. So I think this symphony orchestra was the first time that I had really gotten challenged, not only from a sight reading perspective, because, you know, I never really did sight reading when I was younger, but also to learn that I think one of the most valuable things that I have learned through playing in symphony or orchestra is that sports are not the only things that can form a collaborative atmosphere or that kind of team player thing. Symphony is that way too, and so is, dance performance or choirs or things like that. When you work in a symphony or an orchestra, you have to be willing to work with other people. You have to be willing to yield to the person who is sitting in front of you, or to pay attention to the conductor and make sure that everyone around you is kind of working in tandem.
Sure. And that's not always the case.
Yes, absolutely. That is true.
That is, for people who want to relate this to sports, sometimes it can be a losing team.
Yes, absolutely. There's a huge part of that strong-willed classical atmosphere that comes from individual performance has to be willing to change and yield when it comes to performing in symphony together. Sure. You have to stop being a soloist, and you have to be a team.
Sure.
You have to work together.
Sure. So how did you, okay, so we're progressing along, all right, and we're going through school. So at what point did you decide that when you furthered your education, I know academically you're in pretty good shape to go, somewhere other than to play music. Mm-hmm. So where did you, how did you make that decision?
Actually, it came a lot closer to my college decision itself than I probably would have ever imagined it would. I went into high school thinking that maybe I would go into environmental law, I think is what I was planning on doing. And then the summer before my senior year, I helped out with VBS at the church, as I always had, of course. And then I got a chance to help out with the preschool kids. And, we always have their preschool program there, and I had gotten kind of close with the kids there because I had been helping out with the choir at that time. And I brought a ukulele with me that day, and my sister and I began playing some of the songs that we had learned when we were kids, My God is So Big, and things like that. And the kids just lit up. I could see it in their faces, and they danced and they laughed, and I found myself wanting to reach for the kids and to sing with them and dance with them and play with them. And then I had this sudden realization, music has been around me all of my life, but I had never realized how much of my life relied on that side of music. The collaborative side, the sharing that comes from it, and the way that music can pass boundaries of age and gender and race and
Sure.
It is the universal sharing tool between other people. You don't have to know the notes. You don't even have to speak the same language.
Sure, it's a universal language.
Yes, and I think in that moment I realized that was something that I wanted to pursue. So I originally went into college for music ed, but after taking an incredibly difficult woodwinds methods class, yes, the methods class killed me. It was, the teacher was amazing, but woodwinds are not my thing. And also learning that in Nashville specifically, you don't have to be an educator to share music with other people and also to have a full job.
True.
So after learning about that, I have switched to a commercial performance degree, which is essentially a fiddle degree, where I will get to learn and study with incredible musicians and hopefully end up in a professional atmosphere. I really have no idea where I'm going to end up, but I still know that though I may not be in a classroom, I still will find myself reaching towards people when I play music.
Sure, and you still, all said and done, you can always teach.
Absolutely.
It's and actually, as far as children, I think you and I experienced one of the really cool things is I think we both came to the Earl Scruggs Center on separate days and played for a group of Boys and Girls Club people, which was, in my case, was a very, very good experience. I came with my buddy Phil Ruff, and we played guitar and harmonica. And those kids were just actually one of the coolest things, and I've done a lot of pretty cool stuff, but one of the coolest things that I ever had is when we played for those children, at one point, they started clapping along, and they were in perfect time. We did not teach them. We did not prompt them. They fell in. Adult audiences cannot clap along that well. They'll one will clap on the 1 and 3, and one will clap on the 2 and 4, and it won't even be close. But they were great. It was just a fun experience for me.
Yes, I mean that was incredible
Yeah.
to do. I mean, they are so incredibly fascinated about even the smallest things that I
Sure.
even forget
Yeah.
that you do every day. You know, I didn't put my violin together until they all showed up so that I could show them,
Right.
you know, tightening the bow and
Yeah.
tuning the strings. And they're asking about the smallest things on my instrument that feel common sense to me, but they have
Right.
never seen before. And, you know, I get to teach them about vibrato and about improv
Sure.
and about what I'm thinking when I'm playing. And, you know, I finished playing my improv piece, and it was just a guitarist had came in from the Scruggs Center. You know,
Right.
he came and asked, "Do you need somebody to play?" And I was like, "Yeah, I need somebody to play, please." So he just played a simple 1-4-5 progression, and I improv'd over it, and we finished. And the kids just looked at me, and I just saw fascination and awe in their eyes. And one of them just looked at me and said, "That was so cool." And I'm like, "Oh, that's so cool that you think it's cool."
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Well,
just
if you
fantastic.
touch one of those people, you can do that, and one of those people that at some point will approach music totally differently than they ever had before. They may not become musicians themselves. They may be listeners, but then, you know, listeners is the flip side of performance. Is performing it without people listening is I don't think it's a worthless endeavor, but you know, musicians need people who listen. They need listeners, music lovers, you know. So I always have the highest respect for people who enjoy listening to music.
Yes, it's such a huge part, a valuable part of the process.
It is. I mean, and you know, in that time, probably we touch people who, you know, who will look at music differently than and it's a different. People also get locked into the same music. You know, they hear their parents' music or their friends' music, but that's all they hear. Mm-hmm. And you can spend your life locked in to a small window of what a large world that music is.
Yes, absolutely.
Also, I will have to say that, well, actually, a pedal steel player who did the podcast is actually who introduced me to you, brought you to play with us. After his name is Silas Hamilton, yes. and he talks a bunch of junk. I will tell you, he's a quiet guy, but he told me when he did the interview that he could actually play music with anyone, and you know, without knowing too much about it. So I decided that I would call his bluff. And I got, his dad had said something that about he would like for Silas to play with maybe Acoustic Syndicate. So I called my buddy Brian McMurray and Derek McCoy, and I got really good musicians, and I put him on the spot. Ooh. You know, it's like, oh yeah, well, this is not your little 3 chords in the truth band here. We're going to play stuff that is really hard. But you know what? He did it. Yeah. That's the bad thing. He did
That
it.
sounds like him.
And then he says, "Hey, can I bring Emma to do this?" And I said, "You know, this is a bunch of grown-up old men, right?" You know, and he said, I promise you, she can do it. You know what? You could. And you've been, you know, you've played different. Almost every time you and I played together, we've had different musicians there.
Yes, we have.
And the music has been different too each time. So, you know, and we keep asking you back. So what does that say? You know,
That's true.
we don't ask a lot of people back. But we've done 2. You are, I guess, technically, just like being a member of the Dancing Fleas, I guess you are a member of the Handsome Johnnies.
Johnny's,
Yeah.
yes.
which is basically Dale Britton, Kevin Bridges, and myself doing John Prine songs.
And I showed up to the first gig not knowing who John Prine was.
And
I was afraid I was going to get booed off the stage.
yeah, and we realized she didn't pretty quickly, but she played the stuff because it was music. She played the stuff really, really well. We also knew she was going off to college, and that if she was going off to college, particularly in Nashville, to not know who John Prine was probably blasphemy. I don't know.
Yes.
But she knows now.
Yes, it's a very valuable learning experience, and they get more normal to my ears every time I hear them.
In fact, maybe the next time we'll get you to sing a John Prine song yourself.
That would be quite fun. I would have to study beforehand,
Well,
but I would do it.
And I think we would. I think we'd just set this up just now.
All right.
So for the next
I'll
one,
keep that in mind.
you pick you one, okay? Because we don't know when it'll be. It'll be around sometime you're here, though. I'm pretty sure.
Yep, that's probably true.
So, like you have time to learn something like that. But if you do, we'll let you sing it too.
I can make time.
So that's good. So what else we need to know?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
You have a lot going on.
I do. Yeah.
How hard was the adjustment to college?
I think everyone's first semester of freshman year is difficult, but I think especially for musicians. And for me, if I'm being entirely honest, I was able to coast for most of my middle school and high school, not practicing very much, which, what a valuable learning experience to show up to college. And for my instructor, my violin instructor, I haven't had a classical instructor in a while since my teacher left. And I had a teacher for about 4 months when preparing for my audition for college, but after that, none, So I showed up to my first lesson, and she said, for every lesson you take, you need to be doing 2 hours of practice a day. And I said,
What?
What did you just say? And she said, yeah, 2 to 3 hours. And I said, okay, if 3 is the top, then I will be doing 2. So
Yeah, there you go.
Yep. So
And then you wound up having to do 3, didn't you?
I pretty much stayed on 2, but
Good.
now since I've switched to the commercial performance degree, the whole every new lesson is a 2-hour a day, and I would be taking classical and commercial lessons. I'm upping it up to 4. Which,
There you go.
a learning experience all over again. But there's it was a big struggle in the beginning to not only learn that I have to care for myself the first time and make sure that I get fed and sleep and do all my homework without anyone coming behind me.
Right.
But I'm also responsible for my practicing schedule and making sure that I am prepared for rehearsals and showing up to everything on time. It's a huge learning experience, but about a couple weeks before finals week, I finally started to hit my groove.
Good.
And then finals week came and rubbed it
Oh,
clean slate. So I'm hoping that I still remember how to do it when I get back, and I suspect that I do. I think I've heard some people say, if it doesn't hit them first semester, it'll hit them second, because, that'll be when reality sets in. I'm happy it happened first semester, and I have gotten it over with, so that now I get to have a clean slate and start over and do it better this time.
Were you homesick?
Yes.
That doesn't help things either.
No, it doesn't. I have never been very good with homesickness. I think the longest trip I have ever done that was not really even on my own. I went, I've gone with friends to the beach a couple times or whatever, but I always, when I was younger, I always struggled with homesickness. I had just about gotten over it, and then COVID hit. I became a couch potato.
Yeah.
I lived in my house for 2 years, never really left, and then it's hard to anticipate what that's going to be like, just because I didn't really have a frame of reference with COVID. So that was probably the hardest part, that first month and a half, is just the loneliness.
Well, you also come from a very tight family unit. I mean, that makes it hard in itself. I mean, take away everything else, just leaving. Some people cannot wait to get out of the house. And I'm sure for the experience part, you couldn't, but for the family part, it's hard. It's hard to do that. It's hard to leave those people behind and be on your own.
It's incredibly difficult. I'm very, very close, not only with my family, but with my extended family. the first 1 or 2 years of my life, we lived in Salisbury, North Carolina, but my parents and the rest of my family all moved up here so that we could be closer to my grandparents and my cousin, who also lives here. And since we moved here, when my sister was 1 and I was 2, we have been going to dinner at my grandparents' house. It's now just my grandfather, but at my grandparents' house every week.
Sure.
So I have grown up at, that's the other thing. My extended family is also very musical. You know, my grandfather was also a music director in a church, and we often get called by their church family. They go to Poplar Springs Baptist, the Von Buckners, as a play off of the Von Trapp families.
Yeah, exactly.
Because as my father does, he has learned from my grandfather. My grandfather loves to spring performances on you. So, you know, we'll show up to dinner and he'd be like, all right, we're going to learn how to play this piece. And he will pass out music to everyone. He will sit down at the piano and we all read the music together.
No, that's fun, though.
So, yes, I am very lucky that I grew up into it. I feel bad for whatever partner I will bring home, especially if they're not musical, because that is going to be a hard thing to learn how to do. You know, I've gotten used to it, but I imagine it will be difficult for whoever I decide to bring with me.
Particularly a non-musical person.
Yes, I think that'll be a hard pill to swallow for my family to learn.
Yeah, well, that's true. You know, and that is a weird thing too. Well, actually, if he's a musical person, then that would be, I'm sure he's like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah, that's true. I feel bad if he's non-musical.
No,
I'll have to train him some
that would
before
be
he shows up at home.
Yeah, that might make for a long evening.
Yes, but because of that really close connection, it was really difficult to go so far away. And if it wasn't Belmont, I wouldn't have done it. I was fully prepared to, you know, go to App State or UNCG, somewhere who was a little closer, that I could still drive home on the weekends if I couldn't. You know, I couldn't handle the homesickness, but, you know, I showed up to Belmont, which is on a good day, a 6-hour drive.
On a good day.
Yes. For all of my drives home for not vacation, but, you know, Christmas, Thanksgiving break, it's been an easy 7.5.
Yeah.
Just because of traffic. But I arrived to Belmont, my parents left, and I was faced with the reality of 2 months away from home because, you know, I couldn't go home until fall break.
Sure.
I didn't bring a car with me, and I had no friends there, which is both a blessing and a curse. Now that I have met people, I'm so eternally grateful that I did not know anyone when I showed up, because you don't have to go through this strange dynamic of, well, they're just acquaintances.
Right.
I still need to know them because, you know, we used to know each other. But that's a really hard thing, you know, going and eating your meals alone for the first couple weeks.
Yeah,
just
I'm sure it is.
It's like being in kindergarten all over again.
Yeah, it kind of is. Plus, oh, this is a hard. I got to be careful with this. Also, being totally immersed with musicians is different than the being in the general population, I guess I would say. I mean, musicians are a bit different than other people, and I'm being kind. But they are. I mean, they come from different backgrounds. Music is their life. I mean, you know, it's what they know, it's what they do. And they're kind of quirky, I hate to say, you know.
Yeah, and I do love my quirky people, but I think one of the hugest part about not only going to college and not knowing anybody, but also entering that musician sphere, is that my sphere of musicians in this town has been very small.
Right.
You know, I know them all very well. I know their experiences very well. So entering that group of hundreds of musicians who most likely are as good as or as better than me.
Sure.
Imposter syndrome is hard for musicians, but it's especially hard when you start in the beginning and you have no way of knowing. You know, you start out by immediately comparing yourself to other people, you know, and you start thinking, oh, I should have practiced more.
Oh, yeah,
when I was young, you know, I should have done more, and you get caught up on the past of what you could have done better, instead of looking forward and thinking, I can't believe I get to learn from so
Right,
many people
exactly.
who are so much better than me.
That's a great attitude.
And that switch in rotation it's been difficult, but it has been one of the most valuable things to learn, because I think I would be miserable if I was thinking, oh my gosh, I am so bad at this.
Oh, you cannot do that.
You can't get caught up on that.
No, you can't. If you do, you'll come home
Yes.
and go a whole different path.
Yes.
Because one of the things I've learned is no matter how good you are musically, there's people better.
Yes.
And that there's a lot of times that you just have to accept that no matter what you do, there are people that can do this better than you can do, and it's not a competition. It is a, you know, music is a competition in so many ways, which is part of why it's so stressful. I mean, it's not so much that I hit a wrong note, is I hit a wrong note playing with a person who never hits a wrong note, you know, or neither one of us never did, and I just did, you know. I've heard a story about a horn player, Dizzy Gillespie, and his piano player one time hit a bad note, and he just kind of stopped for a minute, looked over there, and then played music around the bad note he hit and made it fit. So I mean that is that is when you're on a different planet than everyone else. You know, you find something that, hey, I made the mistake, but Emma's all of a sudden playing all around that mistake, making me not look like an idiot, you know, and then no one realizing what a genius I am. But so I don't know. Music is a it is a tough thing to do.
It feels as if it's entirely merit-based, in that everyone can see exactly where you have come from and what your experience is. But the reality is, I mean, we're all working on that imposter syndrome and the panic that surrounds performing in front of other people on our own.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing, too, which is totally different technically than the musical part. Is performance is hard.
Yes.
It is very hard.
It is half, if not more, of the battle that you make it look as if you're enjoying what you're performing.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Again, the imposter, you know. So, but it is as a songwriter, the hardest thing in the world is to do a new song for someone, you know, because you're watching for their reactions, and you're just, you know, you've laid something out there, and it's like, oh, I hate to do that for people I know. I can play a new song for strangers and not care, no big deal. But for people I know or people I love, it's like I almost get sick on my stomach. And I've been doing this. I've been writing songs over 50 years. You know, way over 50 years. So it's you never get past that, I don't think.
Yeah, and I feel like improv is that way as well. I think it may be because I don't do it as much as I will be doing in the future, but it still feels to me as if improv is sharing the most vulnerable part of yourself.
Oh, it is.
And, you know, it's the expression of the thing that is outside of what people, you know, the piece is telling you what to do, or what you're interpreting from the people around you. It's entirely your own.
Well, we'll take the piece you did here earlier, okay? Now, I was really taken with the way that you did. You would have to understand as a musician, but Blackberry Blossom, the song she did, has a lot of walk downs in a musical type of pattern, where there's a lot of approaches you can take to that. And I thought you took a very unique approach. But then there might be somebody out there that thinks that was not such a good, you know. Yeah, and you're subject to that, you know. Mm-hmm. You and I might be sitting here thinking, well, that was pretty good, and then Mark O'Connor come in here and say, you know, and it's like, so I mean,
I haven't known him to be that way, but you know, maybe he would be.
You know, I haven't known him to be that way, because I don't think he has to, because he knows he can play better than you can, and that you're not in the same sphere that he is in. So,
oh, absolutely.
it's but yeah, I mean, you have a good attitude about it. I mean, I think you're fine. I think you've learned to overcome being homesick.
Yes. I think having friends has been a huge part of that. I have always been crippled with social anxiety when it comes to planned events.
Yeah.
I mean, even last week we were going over to the Hamilton Wheelers for a game, and I was panicking because I was like, oh my gosh, what if things go wrong? But the best part about college is that you do not have enough time to think about
True,
it when
that
you decide to do something. So, I get lonely, I text my friends, I'm like, hey, we need to hang out, and they're like, cool, come over, and then that's it.
Yeah. I suffer from, people never believe this. I cannot convince them of it. But I also suffer with social anxiety. I'm really good with one-on-ones, but the larger the crowd, the more uncomfortable I am. So, and there's not a really good reason for it. I'm pretty good with conversations about anything you want to bring up. However, large crowds just bother me. And it's gotten worse as I've gotten older. So unfortunately, I'm not around large crowds too much anymore, and I'm glad. Although, all right, I'm gonna make a confession on here. You never see me out eating because that's too many people too close together for me. People ask me to go, and I say, I got something. I'm lying. I'm just uncomfortable. It's too many people too close.
Well, now you know. Yep.
So don't invite me out to eat.
Secrets have been shared.
They have. They have. So you'll go back. When you go back, you got a whole new course of study, right?
Yes, I do. A lot of new classes. I'll be around a lot of new people.
A lot of new teachers. Or do you have the same basic teachers?
I have a new instructor, a new violin instructor. His name is Dr. Ryan Joseph. He's an incredible performer, and I'm so excited and honored to get to be studying with him. But
Good.
I'm also terrified.
Sure you are. You should be.
Yes. I just, because he is so incredible,
Yeah.
I want to be as best I can, and I can recognize that some days and most days probably I'm going to do things that are wrong, and I'm going to have to accept and learn that this is a process.
Yeah, it is.
If I was showing up to the lesson being the best I could ever be, I wouldn't need a lesson to have to do it. So
yeah,
I need to keep reminding myself that this
good attitude.
This is the best time for me to be able to fail and to learn from
it. Is.
And beating myself about it is not going to do anything.
Well, failure is how you get better at stuff.
Yes.
Well, it's a twofold thing. You can tuck your tail and say, I'm not doing this, or you can learn to get better.
Yes.
I'll give you my personal experience. So a writing place, a big writing place, gives me a chance to come as a writer. And I get there thinking I'm a really good writer, that I'm as good as anyone. And I get humbled really quickly by everyone who was also invited there with me. And not only that, so not only the other people who were invited there like that, but then I go out among the non-invited people, because it's a week-long thing, and I realize that there are people writing in tents that are every bit as good or better than me. And it was like, oh, God, man. Well, I don't even know what I was thinking. I mean, I came back and I thought, I either got to quit doing this or I got to get a lot better, and it's the same way.
Yep.
I mean, music is a humbling experience.
Yes, and it's the mindset that makes it. And I think there's such a huge culture around the fear of failure. And
Sure.
I think that's one of the reasons that people have such a hard time starting and continuing instruments.
It's also the reason, and we can bring it up on here, it's okay, a lot of people have different substance abuse to help cope with this. I mean, it's very, very common. Mm-hmm. As someone told me one time, you do not have to do drugs or alcohol to write or play music, but it don't hurt either, So, I mean, while there is some truth in that, most people do not do that, but so many, it's so hard. It's hard to do that. It's hard to take your violin and stand in front of someone who is judging you, particularly where you're at now. I play across the street there, I don't care if anybody judges me, because it's a different type environment.
Yep.
But you take your violin and you play a piece for a teacher, and it's like, they're judging everything that you do, not just one note, one passage, the whole time.
Yes.
That's hard.
And I think one of the hardest things that I have to learn is that I may be a bad player, but it will not make me a bad person.
True.
And any corrections or changes that they make to my performance does not change my value as a person, and it does not
True.
change my character. And it took me a long time to learn that. I've had a lot of negative cycles when it comes not only to performing, but also when it comes to academic performance.
Sure.
I was a huge overachiever, got to make the 100, got to make the A.
Right.
Because I felt like that academic achievement was a reflection of my value as a person.
Right.
So making good grades meant I was enough. I was
sure.
good. And
Yeah.
making bad meant I was bad.
Right.
So I think that for a long time that translated over into my performance. And I think everybody as a musician struggles with that. The fear that when you fail, you can't recover from it.
And it's a reflection on you as a person, not so much as, and there again, we'll take this and break it down even more. Maybe on this particular piece, I'm not the greatest player. But that does not even mean that I'm not a good player. It's just that this piece of music does not suit me. And, you're not going to like every piece of music that you play. Mm-mm. And maybe a lot of what you play in your life, you don't like particularly. Because you don't always get to play music that you like. I mean, that would be a great world if you could make a living and only play the songs you like.
Yep.
But that's not always the
You're
case.
willing to do everything.
Yeah. And then sometimes that I don't play this very well, but it's okay. Yeah. I play something else well, or you go, well, guess what? I don't play any of them well, but they're fun for me.
Yes.
And people pay me to do it. So
Yes.
It's a mindset, and you seem to have your mind in the right place.
Yeah, today's a good day.
Well,
Some days I'll get crippled by that anxiety and fear, but my hope is that I can change my mindset, because it is going to be incredibly valuable that I can learn those skills if I end up being professional.
Sure. Well, once you become a professional, it all of this stuff will be foundation, but it'll be easier. Mm-hmm. I do think that college is the hardest part of any learning experience, not just academically, but learning of life. I think once you get through that, you take away so much more from the college experience than what you went there to study.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Life gets, it's debatable. Life gets easier to negotiate, although you have to get real jobs, which,
Struggle on in itself.
Struggle on, it becomes a whole different struggle.
Yeah.
But at least you have a foundation from a new job is no different than when I went off to college or when you go learn something new. So you'll be having experience. And you ever been to an audition?
Yes, I have. That's another thing, I think back and regret that I haven't done more, but, I've had to audition for every symphony or orchestra that I've joined, and probably my biggest audition was auditioning into college.
Right.
It was, it's incredibly nerve-wracking.
It is.
And that was the moment where I thought, I probably should have done this more
when
I was younger, so that
yeah.
it felt normal, but, it just feels like you're sharing that part of yourself, and they're judging your character rather than your performance.
Sure. Well, sometimes, so you get out of college and you're going to work, then sometimes it does come down to your character or your how well you fit in with the people, not so much your playing.
Absolutely.
I mean, a lot of times it's we really like his playing or we really like her playing, but they don't really. I can't see them fitting in with us, So then it does. A lot of times or somebody comes in and says, well, I can't stand a guy, but he can play so good. You know, it's like we can overlook that. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, or you can for a little while and you're wrong. But I think you've developed at this point in your life the tools you need to be successful from this point on.
Well, I hope so.
And thank you for taking time from your busy holiday to come do this.
Oh, thank you for having me. This
All
has
right.
been incredible.
All right, thanks.